Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast, put on by Sovereign. I'm your host, Brandon Karpeles. Today, I have with me a guest who is involved in a industry that is near and dear to many Bitcoiners' hearts, and that is architecture, construction, building. We've all heard the nightmares of fiat buildings. Some of us even live in them, including myself. As I watch the building uh, fall apart around me, and I'm also in charge of our HOA, trying to figure out how to remedy the constant maintenance and upkeep that is required by a home that was built in 2004. And there are many such cases, and Bryan Jones from HODL House, my guest, he has a similar story, and that he was around during the '07, '08, 9, or well, the '07 run up, the '04 to '07 ish run up, and then the '08, '09 collapse, and how that really affected his industry view on life and what he saw firsthand. And that was a period of time where they would throw anything together. They didn't have a low time preference outlook. In fact, they had maybe some of the highest time preference outlook that I've ever seen in my life. And many of you know my story of cutting my teeth during the great financial crisis, '08, '09, seeing many of these failed projects, commercial, residential, etc. So, without any further ado, Bryan, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And so, along those lines, why don't you talk to us a little bit? Bryan also up on his website, which is hodl-house.com, has a series of essays he put up there, and they're great. They're short, they're quick, few-minute reads, and there's 13 of them. I'm through about half of them and been enjoying them, and I encourage people to go read. You're a great writer, Bryan, by the way. So not all architects and Bitcoiners are great writers, but you have great prose, and it's enjoyable and entertaining to read your essays. And one of the essays talked about where you came from, and '07, you thought there were many real estate developers back then that thought they were the smartest guy in the room, and many of them still do. They still haven't been humbled. Bryan has been humbled. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your journey, what you saw at the beginning of the 2000s leading up into '08, '09, and how it shaped your views on architecture and construction?
Yeah, during that period, we started our traditional firm in 1998, and kind of we thought we were an overnight success, 10 years in the making. I mean, architects are not trained to run businesses at all. You're trained to like produce pretty projects and get judged subjectively by people who've never worked before. So that's kind of interesting. And get out of school, and then you have to figure it out for a few years to really understand what you're doing because it is complicated. And then about the time you start, usually takes, for my case, was 8 years working for a big firm and then just deciding, that my way would be more fun than their way to do stuff. So kind of make the jump, and just it's really was a bootstrap kind of idea of, working out of your attic, renting a desk, renting half a studio, just building up, building up, building up because there was no capital whatsoever. It's just making hand to mouth. But anyway, we kind of built up till about 12 people, and I'm just a small business guy. Tried to figure this out for a long time. Have you know three? I'm a three-girl dad. Um, I'm a weirdo because I like residential, architecture with actual people. We've been doing that a long time, and all my friends tell me that I'm bizarre, and they don't do that because you don't really you don't make any money comparatively, but it's been kind of fun, and I've always enjoyed it. So back to the story in 2007, we've been working with developers, we've been working with all kinds of people that were drive our 12-person firm, and got to the point where everything collapsed. And during that period, you know, we've I was in this office. We had it was like four. It was, let's see, two marriages, three businesses, $14,000 a month, personal guarantees. What could go wrong? Nothing could go wrong with that. So I'm sitting here in this office, staring at my prison walls, and get a call from my receptionist that says, "Hey, do you want to talk to John Whelan?" I said, "Yes, I do want to talk to John Whelan." Because John Whelan was like this guy in Atlanta that was a just developed neighborhoods all over the place. His name's on the High Museum. Um, and so he called me, and he was doing a project across from the High Museum called Museum Towers, and it had a house that came with it. So it he said, "I want you to meet me at this house. I want to live in this house." I said, "Okay, that sounds great." So went to see him. Looked at these drawings. I could kind of see in the corner there's a title border, and it tells you what number design they're on. You can tell if you know how to read the code. And he was on number 13 of his staff trying to figure this out. So anyway, I gave him two ideas. We got the job, and what that kind of led to was kind of going through the crash, surviving that, doing all those things to just to survive. Realize that I want to work for individuals, and those individuals that do nice projects usually are paying cash, and they're kind of creating their assets for architecture, which good architecture is an asset. And like, bless your heart, you're head of your HOA. I'm sure that's a nightmare. So anyway, long-winded
Sure
story.
is.
Took me 10 years to kind of get to the point where, we knew who we were supposed to work for. And that was kind of that transition.
That's yeah, I remember just going into so many properties back in '08, '09, and just hearing when they were built and just seeing some of the construction, and I feel like it's only gotten worse. And I don't know if you feel the same or not, and you've clearly taken a different path, which is exciting. I actually Have you ever read The Fountainhead, by the way?
I laugh because, yes, I've read that. And on my honeymoon, my claim to fame was I was reading Atlas Shrugged, as my wife was passed out for 24 hours, the customary pass out after the honeymoon, after you get there. But anyway,
Well, I mean, immediately when I heard your story and everything, I just immediately thought of Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead. And everyone called him crazy. He would never compromise his principles. He wasn't doing it for the money, but he did it because he enjoyed it. And he was working with people that appreciated his work, that appreciated what he was putting together, that it was something unique, that it wasn't the same cookie cutter big firm that put something together or just copied old styles. And curious if you kind of feel the same way, that there's a reward and a value in working with people that have a vision. And one of the stories on the essays on your website was about working with a young lady down, I believe it was in Asheville, North Carolina, to come up with a house for her that met her needs, that had thought put into it, that was actually a little more than just simply throwing something together and go, you can live here. But it was built with purpose and for someone that knew what they wanted and what they were doing. And just curious if that's something that's you find rewarding, valuable, and that's kind of what keeps you sticking around doing this side of the business as opposed to some big CRE project or something like that.
well, that's a couple of different questions. And what I was thinking about when you were talking is just, I'm kind of not like Howard Rourke. I think we're more like, um, if you look at our website, it's every house is different. And that's because, it's a different site and different people, a different budget. And so kind of like, I don't know how much you know about architects, but the Star Tech people, um, and I went, I know a lot of them. People see a book that they wrote or something, and they say, "I want that," and they can point at it's their brand, right? And they point at that brand, and that brand costs 15 or 20%, and everything's good. And I think that's more of the fiat side of putting your money in a lot of different houses and making sure that they'll hold their value in that way in style. Where our process is more kind of helping. We typically work with, if I would say architects architecture is done by maybe 1% of the population does a house that's designed by an architect. And so we've always kind of wanted to go, how do we reach more people from the beginning? And that was about, having a process that you kind of like design and bring the budget around at the same time so you can make adjustments. That it all changes, but we want to have milestones to where we listen first and establish a design, get it priced early by a contractor, and then be able to adjust to what people want to afford. And that's the key is everybody has a budget. John Whelan had a budget. So it's kind of like everybody wants to afford, you want to get to that point where they're happy about what they're spending and they feel the value. And that's really, we're more of that kind of service from the day one. And I forgot your second question.
Uh, I was asking if the working with people and the sort of personal touch and being able to connect with someone who actually has a vision for what they want and being part of that 1% of we actually do design the residential houses for individuals, even though it may not be necessarily as profitable as a Wheeland or someone else, if that's kind of what keeps you coming back, or you just enjoy building and constructing things. Just curious as to your personal outlook on that.
No, I do, I hear you now. And I enjoy kind of the drama and the story. Always like, I kind of describe it as kind of setting the stage for life to happen kind of thing. You know, my wife and I go to this church and we call it dine and design when, people ask you to come help them with whatever, the kitchen. So we go over there for dinner usually. And I'm sitting in the corner just kind of watching and sketching. And my wife's over there talking because that's what she does best, better than me. And by the end, you talk about, okay, this is what we're doing. And we've done so many jobs like that. And those are just, just trying to let everybody have a good kitchen at church. But and I enjoy that part. I get handwritten notes from clients, and these are, you know, 2-year projects, significant projects. Most of our jobs are nowadays, anywhere from 750 to 3 or 4 million. But we'll get handwritten notes and saying how we changed people's lives, just how they lived, how they didn't know they were going to live like that, and that's always fun. That brings me back every time.
And I'm guessing not all of those people paid in Bitcoin, but something we do talk about on this show and was brought up by none other than Ben Justman of Peony Lane. He brought up the fact that Bitcoiners and business owners who are Bitcoiners, they're not looking for a transaction. They're looking for a value exchange. And it's that's exactly what you're talking about right there. And that was a fiat transaction, I'm guessing, and it at least 60% of them. I'm kidding, probably 100% of them. But um, that what was being cultivated there was a value for value transaction, that you wanted to provide value for them, they wanted to get something in return, they didn't want to just pay someone to do something, but there was a high value add on both sides, and I'm sure you feel that. And so along those lines, the way Brian and I got introduced was through John Gordon of Sound HSA, who who I know was pushing you, Brian, to talk to some other folks and maybe get your name out there and go on some podcasts and other things. But part of what he said was, hey, I have this guy, to me, was I have this guy, Brian, he's working on this new architecture firm, building company where he's going to be dealing only with Bitcoiners. And so, why don't you tell us a little bit about potentially what you have there and how this relates to sort of the value for value exchange that I was just talking about?
Yeah. Um, Kind of starts, I guess, the origin story, if I can go back to that, was, called my IT guy and I said, we've got this ransomware on our server, and they want a Bitcoin, whatever that is. And what do I do? And he said, well, figure out how to buy one and give it to them because it was like $500 or something back then. So got on my I've been listening to these um, this guy called it's called the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko, and I was learning about gardening. We have a lake house, and I was trying to do all that homesteader stuff out there, and he talked about it, and so I figured out how to like get on Wallet Satoshi and get a paper wallet, buy Bitcoin. And my wife said, "Did you buy more than one?" I said, "No, didn't buy more than one, just bought one." And then next 6 years, work, do your life. And I was kind of sitting at my desk and kept, you have a desk drawer, and I kept seeing this paper QR wallet code over there. And it was when Bitcoin was ripping, like in 21, maybe 40 something, it was in the spring. So I started, I'm gonna see if there's any change in there. And so kind of finally figured out how to shoot it. And there was 8 grand of point whatever change from the $500 Bitcoin in there. So I got super interested at that point about what this stuff is. Um, kind of went down the traditional, that was probably summer of 21, went down the rabbit hole. I think that Breed Love Sailor series did that. There wasn't very much content at all. And did the usual shit cornery and Bitcoin, through the end of the year. Um, I'd never really invested outside my 401k before that. And I'd started before that luckily with some Tesla stuff. So I was kind of shuffling that stuff around and built up pretty good, by the time the end of 21, I guess that was the peak. That was the peak. Got my bonus, got all positioned. I was working on this boat dock, like the world's biggest awesome boat dock at our lake house. And so I was saying, oh, I need like another push and another pump, and I'll be ready to do this thing. But anyway, so I started building the lake house, doing draws. It was going all the way down, to the spring. Luckily, I was kind of selling. And but anyway, learned a lot to where by the end of that process, at least I had a good boat dock and had hit bottom in terms of where I was on Bitcoin, but started just DCA and just started fully committed to just Bitcoin. Kind of saw all that go down. The altcoins drop off the cliff and the Bitcoin kind of cycle down with the market. And so I started down the path of business and personal. And I'm old enough to move retirement into like an in-service distribution into a Unchained account. I worked on that. I worked on setting up for a company so we could, we have a partner, and we have, we set up like a law firm so we could hold different equity with it in each studio. So I did that so I could hold Bitcoin in the equity. In the middle of that, sorry, it's a long answer. Middle of that, heard John on a podcast about businesses taking Bitcoin, and thought I wanted to see what that was about. So called John or DM'd him, and I think he did that for doctor's offices. I said, no, I'm not a doctor's office, but I'm kind of the same. Can you help me? So we went through his little, he probably had a 6-week boot camp to bring partners in, did that, but then decided that kind of had this epiphany that I wanted to really define our marketing on houses that provided the utility of housing, but was an asset beyond just what the bank thought it was worth. And what that meant to us was, does it make energy? Does it produce food? Does it produce rent? So we had this idea of asset architecture. And as a Bitcoiner, me not knowing myself, I don't want to sell. But how could you convince people that they're going to need a place? And John was our kind of our person that was our example, because had been a nomad, traveling around. Now he has a kid. That's not quite as fun. So it's time to get a house. So that he was like our origin story of who we're designing for. And so we kind of set up this the idea focused on asset architecture houses, came up with the idea of HODL House. And then it's become just a way to help people kind of do the pre-design to select the right property. And that property can be a house they're going to buy, or it could be a piece of land. It kind of started out as how do you help people establish their vision. How do you turn that vision into something that, is an architectural pattern, which is plan? And then how do you take that plan and go find someplace? But with John, he's the one that we kind of developed the process with. And because we're architects and not product developers, the way we do it is we say, okay, John, we know we want to do an interview with you and your wife. And he says, yeah, I can do it next Monday. And then our next question to each other is, okay, what are we going to ask them? So it's kind of like we would kind of figure out what we're doing and then do it. So our pattern was to go through this process, and we came up with 3 phases to help people establish the vision. It was called life pattern discovery. And that was interesting because there's a couple of different inputs. We interview each person separately. And I don't know if you've ever done a project, but think about, I've asked my clients this since then. It's like, what happened if we would have interviewed you both separately? And we kind of put that together where you can respond together. And then we kind of come up with these beautiful, I think they're pretty, but these beautiful like little drawing cards. And you turn them over, and it kind of is almost like poetry with what it means in terms of architecture, and then what it means in terms of how we could kind of capture that pattern in a design. So you get through this process. The first phase is the vision. We call it life pattern discovery. Then you turn that into a manifest. That was a John word. The idea of taking it with you to go, find this place, which we for him we thought it would be in somewhere cool because he's always somewhere cool, in Costa Rica or something. But it ends up we did the manifest process with him. Same program. Make a meeting, figure it out, present it, then can kind of refine it to what we're going to do. Then we did, it was called site fit. And by the time we got to site fit with him, which is where you take your manifest and find some place for it, he was looking for houses. And so we were able to kind of, he looked at 3 different houses. We were able to kind of take this plan that we came up with and see how much, how much of the manifest he could, we kind of scored the houses. We actually came up with budgets for them, and we helped him kind of close on a house. And I think we had our first baby of him buying this house like about a week ago. So we felt like architectural doulas, to get that to happen. So that was our first person to kind of go through the whole process.
Yeah, not the Doc's John, but he's going to be coming back to not too far from me. So I'm glad you helped
That's
him and
awesome.
settle somewhere nearby. So yeah,
So so that was, do you want me to share these things? It's pretty interesting. I mean,
yeah. Please go ahead.
um, and this is on our, this is, the web, we're not website developers, but we've kind of become Wix experts for some reason. This is, my team of 2 Georgia Tech graduates who are architects, and another guy. And we've just been kind of working on this. The essays were really to kind of figure out, organize my thoughts initially with John's kind of direction of like the order to go about it. And then we got to the point at the end of the year where we were kind of ready to kind of come up with a service, which became this kind of pre-designed idea. Um, so I'll show you, uh, I'll just do the example. We have a little portal. We do have one client that's paid. It's been awesome in Bitcoin. So thank you. And MetaMail Noster. So that was interesting too.
See, I mean that's a huge part of what we're trying to do at Sovereign as well, to not only educate people about Bitcoin, find business owners that are interested in accepting Bitcoin, that use Bitcoin in their business, but also utilize something like Nostr, utilize Nostr itself to find customers and the type of loyalty and uh, just relationship you develop with your customer, between the owner and the customer, just goes beyond anything you get in fiat land or normie life, whatever you want to call it. But it's just a whole different universe of people and transactions that take place on there, and it's so cool. And I guarantee now, see, the problem is you make stuff that's meant to last forever. And so maybe repeat customers are not as likely, but as people grow, as Bitcoin becomes more valuable, Bitcoiners may want to upgrade their home. They may want to get a lake house. They may want a vacation spot, et cetera, et cetera. So there's plenty of additional capital that will be coming into the ecosystem as well. And they will certainly remember if something was done well and done right and they were treated properly.
Yeah, that's our idea was, we're working with these people that, I mean, the people that were paying cash were usually kind of really quality humans and fun to be around, had interesting lives, and it was great to kind of be on their team to figure their out, figure out what we're going to do for them. And I see the same kind of parallels with Bitcoiners in terms of long term thinking, and it's trying to. That's the way we've always been. You talk about we do projects. We call our last principle for our architecture firm is stewardship, and that's because either like we've done a house, multiple projects for the same client, and the one you referenced before, the small house, that was for a client's kid, um, you know, a, a young, 30-year-old kid, to help them get started.
Young.
Versus have other houses, and we've done 5 projects on one house for 3 owners, and we get called back to be the steward of that house. So we do multiple. There are, and then most of our business is like, referral, hard, good lead referral, you know, to friends. But anyway, these life patterns, um, you go through, like we interview you separately. I want to go through the whole pattern thing. We go through interview you separately, and part of our, through the ones we've done so far, like these were John's cycle of, this is after we heard the interviews, we process, it kind of distill it down to what we hear. These are all emotions, not architecture. We're trying to understand kind of where people are coming from. So for John, it was cycle of returning, because they were nomads, and the web of connection was about, being closer to family, and that's when they were thinking about really living closer to home. Healthy home was, air quality, materials, things like that. We heard a lot. I love this one. Raising with wonder. They have a 1.5-year-old, and that these are our drawings. It's actually my daughter on our team. Her drawings, they're really pretty cool. Um, and then room that's mine. Everybody needs a room that's theirs, but in this case, it was John's wife does these yoga retreats and a place to meditate, a place to not hear the child, um, go into mommy mode the whole time.
I
And
need one of those rooms.
then the energy of it all, that's pretty John. The idea that imagine him at his window, and you can see his son outside, and he talked about a path. He didn't have to be on the water, but he wants a path that he knows that's where you get to the water, that kind of thing. So these were representations of his. These are other ones we've done. This was our paying customer that was in, they lived in Louisiana and looking for a place to summer in Maine. So it's kind of, they want kind of this camp for their kids and family, and multi generations. House that draws you out, kind of, when they get there, it's like paddleboarding, hiking, just what's the day's activity. Part of the island was kind of more the how the wife, she termed it really interesting. It was like how I serve my family. It's like that was, I haven't heard it said that way before, but kind of dealing from the island. She was a paddleboarder, so she's not there the whole time, that's for sure. Where the water
That's awesome.
where the water calls, room to return to, porch to the world. So these are our ideas that you go through that exercise with the interviews. You get to these cards, and let's see. So the result on the back of these cards, let's see. No, that's not.
Are you throwing this up here, by the way? I'm not seeing anything on my end.
Oh, is it? Did I go through anything? Did you not see anything?
I didn't see anything. No, I was just listening. So,
You should let me do
yeah.
it. I'm the worst one at this. I'm no help.
I didn't know if you were trying to share it or
I was
not.
sharing
So
them.
it's all good.
I
I
did,
painted a picture in my head.
it was a
So
great, it was like, it was the best I've communicated in a while. So,
I'm sure the lines were super straight, 90-degree
they were not
angles. Yeah.
straight at all.
Okay. Oh, okay. Even better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, s- I'll,
There we go.
these were John's, the pattern, cycle returning, web of connection, healthy home, raising with wonder, room that's mine.
You do those drawings, or does somebody? Do you have like a police sketch artist on staff, or is that you?
No, these crazy architects, they, you know, they're just freaking talented. It's like these,
I know.
especially the young ones. They can figure out which website, they can figure out how to do these drawings that it's, I mean, we're all doing this as a team, but this is definitely them, not me. But these were, I think they're beautiful drawings. Now, I'm trying to come up, see if I can get to the back of these things.
They are beautiful, and I'm glad glad we got those up there and we circled back to them. And I encourage anyone if they're just listening to the audio to go ahead and take a look at the video version of this to take a look at some of these drawings because they're beautiful. Or just check out the website. Are they available to the public on the website?
Yeah, we actually kind of there's a place, all you got to do is put your email on there and it shows you pattern or the kind of the patterns we're developing and the life pattern cards and an example. I think there's an example project on there. We're working on that. But yeah, we're trying to kind of share these. These patterns, um, as we're developing this process, going through the writings, I got to the point last Christmas. I love the week between Christmas and New Year's to like just kind of regroup and, think.
I used to hate that week because it was year end for me in my Fiat job, but this is the first year I'm not going to have to close the books out, and I've never been looking more forward to a week in my life. So
That's great for you. What I love about it is I remember working in my job and, you know, the fake work that you were supposed to do that week, that kind of thing. It's like now my joy is just to go, and they all know I'm going to do it. It's just like they know I'm going to give them the week off, and I want the week off. We all want the week off, and I'm not. It's a freebie, so it's kind of like
as well you should.
I love that.
I actually had to do the real work, which was the worst part. I didn't even get the fake work while I was there. I was doing actual real
Right.
work. And then the worst part is everyone else was doing the fake work. So I would call them up, ask them to do something, or, well, first of all, we had the interaction client, and you could see everyone's status on there. It was 9 out of 10 out of offices. And then the one person you get, to your point, it was like, hey, you interrupted me in the middle of my fake work. What are you doing here? I don't have time to be going and finding this document or getting this done for you. It was, man, it was like going through TSA, like you bothered them on their schedule. How dare you try to show up here and get on a flight and disturb my peaceful day of yelling at
They're
people.
just trying
So
to get
it was
to
very,
Wednesday so they can not respond anymore. That's all.
yeah, exactly right. And it's like, no, the year is ending. If we don't get this done by 12/31, literally we're going to have a problem. So you actually do need to do this.
So on
So, anyways, I digress.
you read a lot, I've heard, but on your week off this year, when you're just hanging out, last year I was able to go to LA, which was not California, it's lower Alabama, where we like to go to the beach and sitting on this. It was pretty rustic, you know. There was condos around, but this one place was like felt like you're in the Northeast somewhere where there's just plants and one other house, and you really felt like you're in a shack on the beach. And so I kind of posted up, to start writing this kind of the HODL House. This is HODL House essay, and kind of went back to, we were talking about patterns, and then kind of the pattern master of all, that we kind of learned about in school. This guy, Christopher Alexander, who wrote this book, The Pattern Language, which was kind of in the 70s. And the idea of this book was that it was a, physical book, but he had like 300 patterns, and you were supposed to kind of go through and pick the ones you liked, and from community to house to how stuff went together to even down to the detail. And you kind of pick these patterns, and then you're supposed to design your own house. And that didn't ever work out very well. There's not a lot of. I did have one client know about the book that we did a very cool lake house, but they were into it. But I don't think a lot of, and there's still Christopher Alexander societies out there and stuff, but I don't think a lot of houses were ever built that way. So, but what
I couldn't do it. I know that. So
but what it did for us is, trying to learn how to design in school, which is all you're trying to do. You kind of nobody shows up there knowing what the hell's going on. So, got to learn how to be hazed and learn how to design, stay up all night, all that stuff because you're inefficient, whatever. But there's this book, Pattern Language, and it had these patterns that made you think about. It kind of stemmed from my favorite Scottish professor who was always very down to earth, and he came in our little little setup one night, and the first time we ever met him, his words were, "Boys, have you ever seen a pint of Guinness Stout?" We go, "No," because we're in Alabama. We have never seen that. And he said, "You take a fountain pen and write your name in the head. It's at the bottom when you're finished." That was his first words, and he's why he's my favorite professor. But he was telling us about how to design for your grandma and like what asking, it cut through all the crap about just not knowing how to design, but at least to know that you're designing for people and to kind of make it work that way, inside out. That was like the genesis of that, of my design process. And this pattern language book kind of reinforced that because you could look at like uh, bed niche, bed niches that look like a train compartment, and all this stuff that kind of got baked in school. And this Christmas, that week when I was at the beach, I got the book back out. It's right over here. It's thick. It's got lots of pictures. I don't know. But anyway, got the book back out, started going back through it, and I realized like how much of this stuff had been baked in to like how we designed houses, and kind of going through the HODL House process of how we started integrating these patterns into the life. We do the life cards, life pattern cards, but then the architectural ideas that support it kind of they come from this book, but they what I did over Christmas was a kind of he has like a introduction sentence to that pattern, and I kind of expanded it to how we use it now and how it kind of becomes asset architecture and what's changed in the last 50 years. So we kind of came up with our own that we can kind of use to help explain why we're designing a house. And how's the rain? You hear that? It's storming right now.
actually, I don't hear it.
Oh, good.
So
But anyway,
yeah.
that was instrumental over Christmas, and that kind of led to the process with John to develop our deliverables, which were Life Pattern Manifest and Site Fit. So that was
I mean, what's so cool about all this is just everything you've talked about, how much has gone into this, the thought process. This is so much more that goes into thinking about making something for you, your family, your for the long term. And you have an essay about this on your website about how these fiat buildings just get thrown up. Someone's trying to make a profit, and they couldn't care less about anything that the user even thinks about. It's like, is there a bathroom? Is there a sink? Great, you know. And even these high end homes, I'm sure you've seen all the videos. There's tons of these videos where people go around and there's just shoddy building, shoddy construction, super cheap materials, and they just wanted to it's like a Potemkin house almost. They just wanted to get it up, make it look nice. They didn't think about what someone might want or anything. And everything that we're talking about here is a deliberate, purposeful way to think about how you want to live, how you want to have your family feel around the house and how what kind of energy and vibe you would like to have there. And I think a lot of this and I'm curious to get your thought. I think a lot of this is driven by the fact that people have just viewed their house as an investment, as a savings vehicle. And it's like, I'm getting in this house. I mean, I hear so many people talk about this all the time. Just become a homeowner. Just get on the home ownership. It's the best thing you can do in your life. It's the way you're going to preserve your wealth. And what's sad is for the last 50 years, that was basically true. And it was. You just needed to get in a home because a 80% or a 90% mortgage at a ridiculous fixed rate that you can refinance down, by the way, anytime rates go down, it is the most ridiculous form of leverage. It's completely subsidized by the government, and it almost is like this land grab, no pun intended, to just get a bunch of these assets with cheap debt, maximum leverage because the government's going to give it to you. Why not? That's your savings vehicle. And it's almost like, yeah, I don't care if I'm next to a body of water or a sewage plant. I don't care if I'm have no sidewalk or a nice lawn I can walk into, or excuse me, no lawn and there's a sidewalk or a nice lawn I can walk into every morning. And these things aren't even thought about because everyone's looking at it from an investment angle as opposed to a living arrangement and a home angle. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on that, or if you've seen that, felt that.
Well, I mean, we were kind of immune to it, and it was just happening to us slower because these people, paying with cash. Um, and we were in a market. We're in kind of a market it's not the price per foot where we are in town is high. So, our houses are limited by small lots, and so what happens is we've always kind of designed, we've always function stacked. How can we use spaces more than once? Um, we've always been designing for people, so the materials were always very deliberate. They want what they want, or they always want to last. So we've kind of been immune to that thing, but I've seen it change. It's just probably a little bit slower for us, and it's not like you're going to somewhere where they're just putting up a bunch of houses, which I know they do. There's still people that know how to do things, that are cool, and there's good craftsmen. But while we're trying to make this transition is we think, these are the kind of people and the kind of houses we want to design. It's the most fun to do these kind of houses that are good quality and last a long time and, are good architecture. But what's interesting about them, I think what converges is, people that, once they're going to decide that they need the utility of a house, like John, the house does not have to be, 8,000 feet or 12,000 feet or whatever. Uh, a big house, like when we do houses for, kind of retire in place people, the kids leave, they tear down their house and rebuild it for them. Even if you're making space for the kid to come back, it's like 4 grand, 4,000 feet. You can do a good house for pretty good house. Depends on how many cars you have, but that's usually separate. But the heated part and the porches, that's like a 3 to 3,500 foot kind of thing. And so that the strategy is to design just what you need and not what you think needs to appraise. How can you design it, to solve multiple problems? We plan for, the once a year event, the wedding, once a lifetime event. You know, when you're just together, we make these houses, we have an entertainment plan to like how you can use this thing over time, how you can have kids up, have kids at the beginning, go to empty nester, how that transitions. There's lots of thought that you can put into a house. And I would add, the you're only going to go through this 1 or 2 times in your life. It's an amazing thing to go through because you're producing something that's being built and you feel like it's yours. Uh, why not build something that is yours and spend the time to figure out, you know, what it is you need to build? And that's what our process does. What we're talking about for HODL House is really a pre-design process, and it's just helping people figure out what they're looking for, how big it needs to be, and help them find the right place. We don't have to do these houses. Our scaling is being able to do this multiple places outside of our market, and we're just trying to help people get set up the right way. We're happy to do your house, but um, that's really the goal is, I think we can expose people to the reasons they're building more than just they need to build because someone, to shelter their money, the reasons they're building something and help them find the right place. And then we benefit from that by, doing it outside our market. And just our dream is that, we can reach the 10% of people instead of the 1%. Everybody deserves this kind of house, even as could be tiny, but you need something that's for you. The other thing we're doing with this studio, it's still within kind of my studio in terms of my entity, but we're operating on the Bitcoin standard just as an experiment, just to kind of see both. Um, Not a lot of revenue through there so far. A lot of like 1,000 hours worth of time going out, but we had, like we said, we had our one customer, but that's we're ready to do that, and that's kind of our mission: just help people find the right place, understand why they want to be there, understand what they're trying to do, see what that means, and find the right place is what we're trying to do.
I think you're selling yourself short a little bit. I mean, you're going hardcore. We only accept Bitcoin. We only will take Bitcoin. But the reality is, your other business is running on a Bitcoin standard. You just unfortunately have to convert fiat to it. So, as people listen to this, most business owners are going to be in a situation where you unfortunately do have to accept fiat, and we're no different. We accept fiat payments as well. We immediately convert it to Bitcoin beyond what we need to pay some expenses. But to your point, um, that's it's about finding the people and helping them. And Bitcoiners are, you have the one customer that came. You will have more down the road, but as long as you still have your other business and you're just converting dollars to Bitcoin just because the people don't know any better, there's nothing wrong with that either. So I did have a question for you. So who's doing? So you have someone come to you. Um, and they're out of state and they're going to be in not that close to you. So who's doing the construction for them? Are you helping them source a local contractor? How does that process work?
I don't know if you remember, I was talking about the milestones of doing a project. You know, call it 3 steps. So first, after you go through this process of finding the right place, we design the house, which is what you think of, plans, what it looks like on the outside, and a model, that you understand what you're buying. And then what we do then, we've always, with our traditional firm and just the way that we think people should operate, is you get a contractor involved at that time to price it, like kind of halfway through, because you want to get a price so then you can adjust to when you add detail to the house for the interiors and all the fun stuff. So when we work with out of town people, it's kind of a lot of times people have a contractor they want to evaluate, or we'll bid it, and then we can help people make a decision just by questions that going through that process we can tell. But we would do it kind of. It's important to do it kind of halfway through. Is how you would kind of evaluate contractors, and we've done it remote before. Um,
Will you help the home buyer or home constructor help, through that process? Or
yeah, it's a team sport. I mean, you want to have, you know, the, you want collaborators. So you want a contractor that's going to be willing to work with an architect. Some people don't, and and I don't feel like we are egotistical architects at all. We're just trying to get to the finish line and help people, build what they want, and doing the best way we can. So we're very collaborative. And once kind of we get through all those games, it's a team sport, and like I said, it's fun. But I always tell people is, the best jobs are at the end. The client thinks they designed it. I think I designed it, or my people do, and contractor thinks he does because it's everybody had an input and it made for a great job, and it is fun. Personally, I've done a lot to myself this way, like slow flips and projects at our lake house, and always need something going at lunch, to wave my arms and do architecture. Anyway,
That's great. So when just have a question for you personally. So I know one of your essays was about the dock you put in at your place, and you obviously talked about that earlier. So in a situation like that, how much are you involved with stuff for yourself?
we're actually, I mean, it's kind of like the next step of Bitcoin, of living with Bitcoin. When we started putting equity away um, last year, it's been a goal of ours to kind of move there to our lake house. When we have a 11th grader, but we're super old, so it's original wife. So my wife had a baby at 47, so we have an 11th grader. So
Pretty impressive.
but we're building. We have a piece of property next to ours, and we're building in like it's kind of a huddle house because it's going to be our office. It's going to be a rental unit. And so I'm going through that right now personally. And I actually the other night when it was all time high, I was sitting. I had to, you have to have enough for the construction loan, and so I was sitting. I'd allocated it, so which was important. This is a good, interesting in terms of not wanting to sell it, right? So last year, I kind of went through the point. I just for my budget, I said, okay, I'm putting this much for the office construction. I'm putting this much to pay off the lot, our lake lot that's next door. And I think if you allocate it, it almost gives yourself permission to spend as long as you're trading asset for asset. I think it's okay with
Well,
me.
listen, I mean, that's what a medium of exchange is, right? We constantly talk about store value. It has to be a medium of exchange. And the unfortunate part is you're not able to directly exchange your Bitcoin for a lot of products today. So you have to exchange it for dollars and then back. I mean, that's the point of holding money is to exchange it for something in the future. So, the super Mount Pious folks that want to exclaim, "You never saw your Bitcoin." It's like, well, if you took that to the extreme, you're going to starve to death in your cardboard shack on Wackers Avenue. So at some point, you do have to buy things you need and you want, and that's the way Austrian economics works. And I get very annoyed by the people that try to fight the very basis of the economics that led them into Bitcoin many times.
Well,
So, no judgment here or anything.
it was fun because the way we set up our business, like I was able to take all equity from my office, into equity account for this LLC to build this project. So that's sideways, no taxes. That's awesome. And that's like an extension of just hard money for me. And it's
Yeah.
like I said, they trade you a school for us, how to freaking design, but not running a business. So it takes you 20 years to figure it out. I'm a late bloomer. I've, felt like Bitcoin helped me, you know, start down the path to figure out how I can, you know, get the benefit of, leverage, not leverage, but, having it, saving enough money to be able to use on assets, use it in a smart, a way that is effective for taxation. Um, so it's really kind of changed my life in terms of how I think about my office and personally and everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big story we try to tell here on these podcasts as business owners, how it's affected their life, how they've been able to use it to better their business. And so I know you were talking about the what you had allotted, so maybe you can continue to talk about that, and then just in general how it's helped better your business. I know you sort of touched on it tangentially, sort of 10,000 foot view, but maybe if you want to drill down a little bit on what were those things that made it better for your business, that made you more confident in what you were doing, that helped you in running a business.
Well, we're kind of to that point right now. I mean, we talked about 2007 and 8, that kind of crisis. I'm kind of feeling that right now. I'm feeling like it's 2007 right now, and um, I'm thankful. We just finished this. I said I work for homeowners on their houses, but we also work for groups of homeowners. We just finished this giant country club project for the last 3 years, and it's the classic. You're working on this project and you're not really like churning the marketing that much, and now we're struggling a little bit. But I think we're struggling also with just the tariffs hit, and we're kind of living through that right now. And interest rates went way up, and all of a sudden it's not so easy anymore. So stuff is still happening, and we've been working. What Bitcoin's allowed me to do is kind of pivot to this HODL House idea, which I was doing before it really slowed down. But it was just like, kind of felt that was what we wanted to focus on. I wanted to, instead of architecture firm being kind of more broadly focused, I wanted to focus on something very narrow and just to do this kind of housing. And so it's allowed us to kind of invest in that, knowing that we have, kind of a cushion and we have some equity built up. And if we had to, we could spend it. I'm trying my best not to spend it. I don't want to spend it. Right now I'm making, we're going through, we're kind of organizing a little bit how we're handling some of our younger staff to make it more incentive based. I'm going to pay revenue on the HODL House stuff until we get to the end of the year. We're paying for billable hours and we're paying a defined amount of overhead just as a way to kind of, we got to design our business to make money. We've been doing it for 5 years now, and all of a sudden, we're a little bit behind. So it's kind of like we got to right the ship. And so it's allowed us the cushion to be able to make decisions without being panicked. That's been pretty nice. And that's, business. I think more products are going to come out. I haven't done a loan yet, but it seems like that's be a lot better to do a line of credit with Strike than to do it, in a bank. So anyway, I think it's really just mental, it's between your ears and confidence, and gives you more courage to kind of make moves you think you need to make, gives you the ability to do that.
Well, especially architecture, general contracting, anything in the construction business, and there's a ton of other industries, small to medium sized businesses as well, that when you're a small business, you're going to have ebbs and flows, and things are going to be cyclical, and you're constantly adjusting, you're constantly trying to tune the knob. And back in my old life, when I worked and handled distressed deals for companies, most of the time these businesses, they got into trouble over time and they never addressed anything. And instead of having a cushion, they just kept taking on more and more debt, more and more debt. And then ultimately that catches up to you. And then you're in a panic mode. Then you're not able to address the situation. And a lot of times these people just didn't address the situation. And then when it actually came to like, now we need to do something. Now we better think about what's going on. There was no runway. And it's just like, boom, the plane's out of gas. We're donezo here. And they never got that opportunity because they didn't have Bitcoin or the cushion to be able to do that. So you bring up such an important point. And these big companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, they just have so much on their balance sheet that it's just they can survive all sorts of stuff. They don't really have to worry about this stuff. The cycles for them are making 40% margins instead of 35, and it's not really a problem for sort of the 1% of the 1%, but for 95% of the rest of the businesses and small business owners out there, this is a constant battle that business owners face, is going through changing cycles, going through changing demand. Everything is constantly changing around you, and you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, are constantly having to innovate, constantly having to twist knobs and figure out what works. And I love the way you said that, the ability to not panic and calmly approach the situation. That's what Bitcoin really allows you. It gives you an opportunity to figure out what does work, what doesn't work, and ultimately, get back and weather the storm for those downtimes.
Yeah, I'm hoping it takes us from I would call myself a solopreneur, but I want to get from that to something else. How about that?
Yeah, it's which is even harder. I mean, the more you go down the food chain, the less of a sort of corporate structure there is, the less of that insulation, the harder it is to handle the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. That's when you get the most volatility. Is the smaller amount of people. And it's not to say that having some big head count is a good thing. Many of those places need to pare down, but the people actually doing the work and actually running the company, the less you have of those sort of productive people in your business, the higher the volatility.
I mean, it's amazing how much I saw it on this on our big project we did. How with AI and everything else, it's amazing how much work we can do. 5 people, 6 people can do a bunch of work, bunch of architecture, and do it well. And my tribe is no one's been here less than 4 years, and it's one. My project architect's been here for 19 years, so it's kind of like it's family, and we are all on the same little boat and row in the same direction. We all love each other, and so I think this different, this time is changing. I think you're in a position to where firms like ours can do a lot of interesting things, and we're going to be able to pivot, and um, I'm excited.
I personally think that's where all of this is going, that businesses are actually going to start shrinking down, getting a smaller footprint. And I'm not the first genius to have this idea. Many people have talked about this. And to your point, there's just not going to be a need for these big headcounts. Jobs that used to take 10 people can be done by one person with a computer now. And it's just reality. And but the cool thing is that gives people the opportunity to go out. If you have some Bitcoin, if you've built up some savings, if you've been DCAing, if you've been putting your money away, now all of a sudden, not only is your money appreciating, but your capital goes even farther than just the fiat appreciation and your increased purchasing power. The cost of everything to run a business, to start a company, is coming down so exponentially. And I know Jeff Booth has talked about, which, by the way, has anyone ever told you look kind of like Jeff Booth? Yeah.
I like it. Um,
But
yeah, the cost of houses in Bitcoin. That's crazy, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, all this stuff is coming down, and I think there's gonna be very fertile ground for a lot more entrepreneurship and a lot less of these big monolith organizations. And it's going to be an era of opportunity, and you better have the right money, because if you're trying to operate in this environment on a fiat standard, you're just going to get absolutely destroyed. You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to compete. And so you better have the right unit of account if you want your company to last more than a couple of years.
I agree. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, Bryan, I appreciate your time. How do people reach out to you if people want to go through this process with you and think about designing a home? And I guess one other thing before we go here, what is the process that people do when they sit down with you? How long should they expect it to take? What should they expect the cost to be? And what does it look like?
Yeah. The process of the pre-design process, which is the HODL House process, kind of the interviews. We'll interview. We can interview you in a week. Takes us about a week it's 3 weeks for that process. It's interviews. It's us consolidating everything and then having a kind of a presentation to take you through it. So it's 3 weeks for the first step. The second, it's 9 weeks total is how it works. Well, I guess it's 3 weeks for the first step. Second step from manifest is the design of that. And that's another, kind of a pre-meeting, a work week, another meeting. And then to find your house, it kind of depends, what you're doing. That's what we're learning is that is just like roller coaster. If you're looking for a house, hopefully it gets easier when houses quit selling. But right now, it's kind of like you got to react and be able to help people. pull the trigger. And what we do is we set up our kind of the site fit process. If you're looking for a house, we have a part that we do before you sign a contract. So we call it pre-contract, and then after you have the contract and you have a way out, we do due diligence to really figure out kind of how it fits and budget and all that kind of stuff. So we can kind of help you quickly, make sure it's the right one, and help you understand, at least some broad brush budget stuff. If it's a renovation, John had a couple of different versions that one was going to cost. It was an 80s house, it was crappy, everything was going
Yeah.
bad. And the one he ended up buying it was like an architect's 50s house, super cool and built well. And, so it's like all those things should be factored into buying this, because if you are thinking long term, you're going to be there, you're probably going to change some stuff. So you want to make sure you're not overbuying and you're not getting in over what you want to spend. And that's if you're looking for product. If you're looking for land, what's interesting is we can we can do a lot from space. Like we can see your land, we can understand zoning, we can put your property on it, the house that we've kind of thought about. So we can kind of verify there's easements, stuff like that, just kind of before you buy. It's like a little, might tell you some things you didn't know, and that might tell you not to buy that piece of land. So we can, we're not all knowing, but we can definitely kind of use our tools that are available through local, code and zoning, and just we'll design these houses. If you ever, houses can be, the same house can be on a lot and feel totally different depending on where the sun is, right? So, sometimes lots, let's say you go through the process and you're going to have a 2-story house, or sometimes we've designed it to where we know where the sun wants to be as it kind of lays out with your property. We can make sure that stuff is going to work kind of on the property you're buying. But anyway, I think so that total process, your question, is kind of 3 weeks, and then kind of it's a wild card based on kind of what you're looking for to do the site fit. Then when it is time to do the house, again, we're like, really, our goal is to help people find the right place. Happy to do your house. If you did your house, it's more of a full-on architecture process. If you do that anywhere, it's it's kind of like a 6-month process by the time you can build. You're having to go through. There's only so much information you can absorb of drawings and things that you may not understand. It takes a while to kind of digest that as you go. We kind of do it in the right order, so you don't, make a decision now that it's going to screw you up later. So we know how to make the decisions in the right order, so you don't step on your toes. We can phase projects. All that kind of stuff is what we're used to doing. But when you decide to do your project, if it's a ground up, plan on, at least 6 to 8 months to get ready to build, and then the build itself is usually about a year. So depending if it's a full kind of gut job and redo everything, or a new house, a year plus minus is for that kind of smaller, not a giant house, but a smaller house.
And what should someone expect for cost for sort of the pre-process? Obviously, it's going to depend on the size of the house, the lot, location, but in terms of your services at the beginning.
Yeah, our process right now is priced at 0.1 for the total, all 3 steps. So 0.025 for life pattern, 0.5 for manifest. 0.05 for manifest, 0.025 for the site fits. And we're still evaluating that. We did our first one. I immediately asked the guy, talked about value and asked some questions. How'd you feel? And he said, I got a great deal. So that's maybe charging too low, not charging enough. But anyway, we're going to keep.
Oh wait, sorry. Say that again. It was 0.01 for the pre.
Now for life pattern is 0.025.
Okay, so
3 grand.
25 million sats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
No, no. Oh, sorry. 2.5 million.
then
Yes.
for the design manifest part is 0.05, and
Okay.
then it's
5
0.025
million.
for finding the site. That's just, we're kind of evaluating. Right now, it costs a lot more than that. We're kind of, everyone we do, we're trying to get our process down, and then by the end of the year,
Okay.
we're trying to understand. So
I was gonna say, no offense, that seems cheap,
we're
but
we're guinea pigging
yeah.
right now. So
Okay. Okay.
you're a
All right.
willing participant.
Well, yeah, maybe. Hey, Bitcoiners, now's the time to reach out. You might be getting a discount you didn't even realize. So,
Yeah.
uh, uh, that's awesome. So, so exciting, and honestly, as I a friend of mine, Kelly Lannon, who's in the construction business, talked to him. He's worked with a couple other guys in the Bitcoin space that are doing these sort of custom build, low time preference. And my wife and I are considering what we're going to do for a living situation sort of in the next 4 or 5 months here. And it's really changed my outlook and thinking on how do I want to approach this. And we just had our first kid, and uh,
Your
hoping to
job.
have some
Your
hoping to
job.
have some more. And yeah, so it's really my outlook on all this stuff is completely different. And even just simple things like you said, the sun. I mean, my place, if I knew what I knew about the sun and how important it was and everything when I would have never bought this place, because chasing the sun around my place is like a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. It's
I got to look out one window in the morning, and then I got to go out front at lunchtime, and then I got to like sit at one corner of my back deck, but only during the fall because the sun's at the right level. And like, I know like the what is it, the celestial orbit or whatever around my place now. And yeah, same thing. Thinking about all this stuff, like I will never put myself in a position again where it's got to be like this. So all super important things to think about that many people just don't, and you don't even realize how critical and important it is. So
well,
um
we
yeah,
say, I mean, you need to find it's super, like I said, it's super fun. We want you to find your kind of your sacred place that makes, that means the most to you. Our place, the lake, has become that, to where, that's where you want to have a place that's where you want to be. And it's okay to leave, but that's where you want to be. So that's
and that's
possible.
the way it should be.
That's possible if you really think about it.
That's absolutely the way it should be. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for your time. And where the website is hodl-house.com. Where else can people find you? You personally, or company sites, or not sites, but handles, or whatever you want to give out.
On Noster, it's I think it's kind of goofy. The Bitcoin Architect was John. Thank you. But that's what
Yeah,
it's called on Noster. I never really got to X. It's
good.
too busy working, I think. But HODL at jonespierce.com. I'm Bryan, Bryan at HODL.com, HODLHouse.com. And happy to help.
Awesome. So reach out to Bryan, reach out to his firm if this sounds exciting to you guys. And you heard the prices on here. If you're looking, if you're serious, I assume you do some vetting on folks. You don't just let them come in and kind of pick your brain
No,
in minutes.
there's a way to sign up for a, happy to chat with anybody. There's, the
Yeah.
customary 15-minute chat, and just to see if, we're the right fit for each other. That's kind of the biggest obstacle. But we're happy to share what we know from 15 minutes and go from there.
Yeah, it's something a lot of Bitcoiners should take very seriously. I know they do take very seriously. So please reach out to Bryan if you think this opportunity is good for you. And really appreciate your time today. Thanks, Bryan.
Thanks, Brandon.